Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So, to further understand the complexity of a young person, we need to explore the context that they're in, and one of the main contexts is the family. Just like for those of you who just watched the video, just like the video said, research very clearly shows that parents do have the greatest influence on their child. So I want to stress that the family context is not only the relationship between the parent and the child. There's so much more to it. So, for example, there's the family member history. So, understanding the state of the individuals in that person's family. So, does a family member, be it a parent or a sibling, have a mental health illness or a physical illness that's stopping that individual from giving the youth proper physical or emotional support? Um, there's also single parent households, which is a big thing. Not only does that affect the youth, but also, it's essentially the loss of a second caretaker. So that puts more pressure on, the first parent to raise kids, which is already, not an easy job to do. Um, so those would be risk factors. So protective factors would be having that family, or whether it's the biological parents or parent figures. In a population here that our communities need to focus on is the convert community, because sometimes they do come from backgrounds where their families reject them because of their convert status. So how can we, as a Muslim community, help give them that emotional and physical support that they need? So then you have family structure dynamics and cohesion. So sometimes you have family members, whether that's between two parents, between the parent and the child, and even siblings, who just simply don't get along. There's no opportunity for bonding, no shared activities within the family. And a quick point on marital conflict and divorce, which unfortunately is something that we're seeing more often. Sometimes the youth end up blaming themselves when parents are so engrossed in that dysfunctional relationship and neglect the child. The youth ends up with this constant need to be loved, which is then never fulfilled. And then you have family violence, aggression, and something even more subtle, which is emotional abuse. Most emotional abusers don't even know or realize that they're being abusive, and lots of victims and lots of children, they don't like it, but they think that's just the way it is. What am I going to do about it? And they just put up with it. Things like putting the kid down, or not recognizing their abilities, or making fun of the things that they are not perfect at, or just plain disrespect. It's really, really important to be mindful of family dynamics as well, because because of it, some kids, affects the kid's behavior and how the kid interacts with other people. So because of it, some kids just, might naturally just be more touchy-feely because that's how their family, modeled affection, whereas, others might find that weird. So it's really important, it's crucial to realize that there isn't one right way to have family cohesiveness, but, so just because one kid is more outgoing and another one isn't, there isn't anything necessarily wrong with that, but you should always be mindful of why a kid is acting a certain way. So if you know the family is, more open, more okay. So the next point is parenting styles and modeling. So you'll find that some parents are trying to find that balance between giving their kids autonomy and then being there as a support and guide, which is obviously they're both important. Kids, they need structure and they need guidance, and without it, it's really hard to tell right from wrong. Especially since living in America, a lot of the norms within the youth are not Islamically appropriate. So they need help avoiding negative peer influences, and they need age-appropriate rules and consequences. So you know, if the parent is not doing that, then what can mentors do? What can teachers do to help with modeling and with parenting styles? So, in the case of Ahmed Mohammed, you know, we can see very clearly, you know, that his family was there for him. I just saw a Twitter post on how his dad was giving out pizza to the people who were interviewing him. And so, what does that show? You know, how is that affecting Ahmed? You know, like that modeling behavior, he's showing him, you know, to be um, to be polite and to be nice and to have that akhlaq that we should have. So yeah, so I wonder, you know, like what would have happened had he not had that support? Would he be where he is today with all of these offers? So degree of acculturation. So for a lot of families, you know, it's a point to be aware of, to realize how are the parents showing the youth what's okay and what's not okay to adopt from the majority culture. And then also, how are they reacting to the youth's degree of acculturation themselves? You know, are they okay that their kids are, you know, smoking or, you know, doing whatever it is? Or are they, you know, aggressive and, you know, they're really on the other extreme side? Parental monitoring. So many families are so stressed trying to make ends meet and keep up with, you know, the house or even, you know, doing, you know, dawah. But sometimes, you know, they fail to guide and monitor their kids. And again, youth, they need structure and they need monitoring. So parents, they really do play the biggest role in forming the personality of the child. So we also need to be mindful of our interactions as well, whether you're a parent or not. You know, how are we modeling relationships with others? What does our degree of acculturation look like, and how is it perceived by the child? You know, how much monitoring do we do when we're in charge of youth? So moving on to the second context is youth, and you know the peer context. So again, there's so much more than just how the youth is treated by his or her peers. So of course, the types of relationships are important. So you know, the youth, they're at a vulnerable stage in their life. You know, they watch each other and they learn how to interact with each other by their environment. And of course, Muslim kids are no different. If a kid is constantly rejected by their peers due to, you know, discrimination or any other reasons, which is something that we heard Ahmed talk about, you know, they're more likely to feel isolated, to reject society, and to more, you know, to be able to engage. They're more vulnerable to engage in risky behavior. So one point that I heard Ahmed say in one of his interviews was, after the way he was treated, he felt like all of those things that the kids were calling him. And, you know, he listed, like, terrorist as one, and you can almost hear the anger in his voice. But, again, going back to the, you know, understanding the complexity of all the contexts together, he had that family context to help him, to support him, and also the community. So leisure activities and interests. You know, numerous studies, they show that Muslim youth whose friends engage in risky behavior, or even if the kid perceives their peers engaging, they think that their peers are engaging in risky behaviors, they're more likely to do so themselves. So whether they are or they even think that they are. So, you know, that goes into norms. So what do they talk about? Are they very casual about, you know, risky behaviors? That also affects the child, the peer. So as members and parents, you know, family members, and mentors, so making sure that the kid is engaging in safe, monitored activities that promote healthy development.
You know, I think that what Hannah is talking about is really understanding the importance of peers. And peers can be both positive as well as negative. And for us to really focus on understanding how can we cultivate those positive peer relationships, around young people because of the fact that it is such a powerful relationship. And it's a time period where young people want to belong and need to belong much more than any other time period. This is the time period where they're also trying to figure out who they are in their world, and with peers being such a reflector of who they are and giving feedback, this peer group is extremely important. So when we think about it from a school perspective or a masjid perspective, or even as a parent, we want to figure out what are the different things that we can do to cultivate those positive relationships for young people, so that they do feel belong, they do feel accepted, and they use those peer relationships as an opportunity to help build and develop long-term relationships, as well as figure out who they are and what it means to be who they are, as opposed to being dictated by peer pressure.
And also recognizing how important of a protective factor the parent-child relationship plays. Parents who develop a close relationship, cultivate that relationship with their children early on, build their confidence, build their self-esteem, sense of self-worth. Don't make comparisons, don't put down their child. Will develop that close bond with their child, and the idea is that bond is stronger than any other bond they may create with a peer, so that when they are exposed to peers that engage in alcohol use, tobacco use, risky behaviors, that they care more about acceptance by their parents than acceptance from peer groups that engage in risky behaviors. And so that parent-child relationship plays such a critical role in terms of that long-term development of that child, and oftentimes teenagers and young adults care very deeply about what their parents think, especially those that have formed a close relationship with their children.